Yeah.
Sure is.
Well, that clock is 7 minutes low. So anyway, I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I'd like to, who help me lead us in the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dana. Hi, Bob. This night, meeting is dedicated to Pete Lyon, who is a longtime Stanford resident and a member of our fire company. And I've asked Dennis, who was close friends with him, to talk about him tonight. We also lost a longtime citizen yesterday,
Day before yesterday, I believe.
Yeah, Tuesday.
Yeah.
Aaron Clancy died tragically, the Mr. Aaron Clancy as opposed to his wife, in a car accident, a very bad accident on 844. And Dennis will be speaking a bit about Aaron as well. So Dennis, would you come up? Yeah.
My name is Dennis Wall. I'm the Assistant Chief for the town of Stanford Fire Company and Rescue Squad. Pete Lyon moved up from the Peekskill area years ago. He worked for the MTA and he loved the area, and he finally moved up here and bought a house up on Ernest Road, and he applied for membership of the fire company. He was accepted February 20th of 2007. And he came with a lot of EMS experience. He had been a 9-year EMT down in Buchanan and Montrose Fire Company, Buchanan Ambulance Service. And just a couple things, I'll just read out what the chief and the people said down there. His reason for joining Stanford on his application read, "I wish to help out other people who are injured or sick, to give them quality care when a crisis happens." And he did numerous times. In his lifetime, he responded to well over 5,300 EMS calls in his career. As a member of the Cortland Community Ambulance Corps in Montrose for 9 years, Eric Singer, the captain, described Pete as an unbelievable asset to the corporation. Anything that needed to be done, Pete was the man to do it. The captain went on to say that the best thing he could tell you about Pete is that he is a team player, and it didn't matter what position he held. All the members would go to Pete if they had a problem with the fleet or the building, and the problem would be addressed and fixed. And the same rang true here in Stanford. He had become the rescue squad captain for many years, and he did an unbelievable amount of behind-the-scenes administrative work with the state health department. And believe me, there's so much to be done running an ambulance corps with certifications and everything with the state. He finally retired after 38 years from the railroad, and then he basically dedicated his life to the EMS system here in Stanford. And he was a very good friend. He had a wealth of knowledge about anything. I mean, trains, EMS, fire. I mean, you asked him, he could probably give you an answer. So, but we miss him. He was active from 07 till his death August 15th of this year. So, but then unfortunately, Aaron Clancy died tragically in an accident on his way to work. And I had known Aaron a long time. He had also been in the EMS service. He was a paramedic with Northern Dutch Paramedics. We worked with him on numerous scenes, and be a great loss to this town. Thank you.
May I add something about Pete?
Yep.
I am so grateful to Pete, and I'm glad that before he passed, I had the opportunity to thank him for the many times that he came to calls for my husband. He had a very calming way about him. He was very knowledgeable, and he just really took charge of the situation. And I'm glad I got to tell him that before he left.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
If we could just have a moment silence for both of them. Thank you. So, Rita, would you call the roll, please?
Sure, Wendy Burton,
Yes.
Ann Aaron,
Yes.
Margaret Fallon,
Here.
Nathan Virtue,
Yes.
Fran Pepe.
Yes.
I would now like to call for the town board liaison reports. Nathan?
There's nothing from the rec. They meet next week.
Easy.
Yep.
Margaret?
The CAC is working on riparian restoration along the Wappingers Creek, and they're going to be having a public event soon. And they're also working on their table for Community Day, and especially if you have any questions about invasive species or anything else about the local ecology, they would love to have you stop and talk to them.
Adam?
They meet next week.
Frank?
A couple of things, Community Day, we were able to bring back the Senior Citizens Club Forever Young. They'll have a table. The Dutchess County Commission on Human Rights will have a table of their own this year. Also, Central Baptist is very pleased to join us. Their members who live here will be at the table as well. And we may also have a table dedicated to Ukrainian relief, Mark Raggett. And again, this year, another new addition, beginning last year, Stanford, a Caring Community, will all be at Community Day.
Terrific. My report, we received my we had 3 payrolls in August.
Two. 3 in September.
We're having 3 in September. I haven't reported those yet. I reported 2 in August, and you received my supervisor's report and bank reconciliation. I will give my end of August financial forecast. The revenues look excellent. We will definitely meet our sales tax goal of, which is also called non-property tax, of $300,000, as we're 92% there, and the next payment comes in November. The town clerk fees are over 124%, and I've said this in the past, the small revenues count as much as the big ones.
Thank you.
Disposal tickets continue to be on target. We're already $2,500 ahead on the CO fees and research that Katrina Gore does. We will be going over on court fines as we added $54,000 in August, and we only need $8,000 more to meet the goal of $250,000. We'll also be over on the mortgage tax, so we're in good shape for this year. Appropriations are also in good shape. The budget line modifications, which I will ask you to pass tonight, puts all our lines back in balance. As far as my supervisor's report, the fire company has once again worked long hours to set up our magnificent 9/11 memorial. There'll be a ceremony on Sunday morning, September 11th, beginning at 8, or is it 8:30?
8:30.
8:30, thank you, Duffy. 8:30, and it will include a poem and a prayer. And then at 8:48, which is the time that the first plane struck the first tower, the recording of all the names of the victims will begin, and it will run all day. I'm going to step on Frank's toes here, but Community Day is set to be the largest ever, with more tables and exhibitors than ever before. Special thanks go to Ryan Orton, the Secretary of the Grange, and all of the community members who faithfully came to the numerous planning sessions to make this 64th Community Day so special. The booths open at 9 a.m. and will stay open until 3 p.m. There's a car show again this year, baseball games on the rec field behind the Grange. The Red Barn Band will be performing on the grandstand, and we welcome many new participants. Sometimes it just gets stuck. Including the Forever Young Club and the Central Baptist Church. From 6 to 7:30 p.m., this is important, the Stanford Fire Company is holding its fundraising dinner for Ukraine at the Rec Pavilion. Tickets can be purchased in several places, but they can be purchased here in the town clerk's office. And if you buy them early, you get a special price. We'll also have fireworks at the Rec beginning at 8 p.m. and programs which are just fabulous and fatter than I think they've ever been, are available around town, including again here in Rita's office. The newsletter tomorrow will be packed with information. There are many, many events happening around town this coming week and onward. So please read it, and if you don't receive it, please just go to the website and sign up for it. And if you don't have a computer, we're mailing out hard copies. So just let us know and we'll add you to that list. And we also keep a book of them in Rita Mary's office that get printed out every week. The last thing I want to say is that under some pressure from the town board, we finally did receive the structural assessment report, which we will be reviewing and then giving a report on. So I think that's all I have to say. And now I'd like to open privilege of the floor. If you have something you'd like to address to the town board, please just state your name and your address for Rita Mary and come up to the podium and have at it.
Are there any extra agendas?
They're all up here.
It could be one line.
I'll take it that's not a privilege of the floor.
Always?
Well, that looks like it's the
That's the
agenda,
agenda.
but there's all these different handouts.
Do I go over there?
Yes, please, Roberta.
Okay,
Just tell Rita your name and address.
my name is Roberta Kemp. I live at 149 Creamery Road. I am a longtime resident of Stanford since 1954. So I'm a bit of a historian at this point. I can tell you what went on then. This town was booming, trust me. But why I'm here tonight is in various conversations with various groups of people throughout my travels, I find that there is no knowledge that in November there will be a referendum to be voted on about the cannabis shop and lounge. People are saying to me, but that was settled, we opted out. And I said, no, because then there was a petition, it was signed, and everybody was checked that they were who they were. And then the upshot was that it has to go to a referendum. And I really feel that people need to know that information before they come to vote in November. And they also need to know that the first 50 licenses that will be given to anyone who wants to open a shop and lounge will be given And they've already given, like how many will be in the Bronx and how many will be in Westchester and the Hudson Valley. So we will be impacted by that. They are to be given to people who have had past criminal charges with marijuana. Did you all know that?
Yep.
You did? Okay. Well, they say that this is being done in the spirit of equity. And I guess I find this a little difficult to swallow. I came here as a 17-year-old, married my husband, raised 2 children. None of them put myself through college to become a nurse by scrubbing other people's toilets, essentially. My husband was a 67-year volunteer of the fire company. He also was in the Lions Club. He also served on the town council. And it seems to me like we did everything right. The only thing, I have never had a ticket. I have never had a parking ticket. My only time I had anything to do with law enforcement was when I actually had my granddaughter arrested. And nothing for myself, nothing for my husband. So I'm saying to myself, where's my equity? I did everything right. My family did everything right. And I guess I have a little problem with this being given to those who at the time broke the law.
Okay, Roberta, thank you.
I can't hear you with your mask. I have a hearing deficit.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think it will behoove both parties and the town. As you know, the board voted not to opt into either having dispensaries or lounges. As you said, there was a petition. It will be on the ballot, and then everybody gets to vote on whether they, want them in Stanford or not. And so that's how.
But they need to know that ahead of time.
Yes, and
Because they right now don't. I've talked to like 40 or 50 people.
well,
None of them knew.
that I'm sorry they weren't paying attention, but we will make sure that we let people know what's on the ballot.
Okay, something through the mail perhaps?
Well, I don't
Because a lot of us, some of us don't have computers.
Yeah, I don't know, we'll figure that out, and actually, it's up to the individual, I would say it's up to the parties to let their constituents know what's on the ballot, but we will, as a town, we will discuss it. We're not responsible actually for educating people about the ballot, it's actually not our job, but we will do what we need to do to make sure that people are aware that there's a referendum.
Yeah,
Okay?
okay.
Okey-dokey.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roberta. Does anybody else have anything to? Yes, Carol.
And I have one thing, Wendy. Roberta was talking about the referendum. There's a second referendum too for the library
Okay, so we will have to
on the
be,
ballot.
right, that's right, because they need to change their budget this year. So Roberta, there's actually 2. We'll make sure that the word gets out.
So I have to go door to door?
No, honey, you don't. But
I
you like
can.
to, I know. I know.
I'm Carol Hanlon, at 422 Hobbs Lane. I just want to say a few remarks about the application. Can you hear me? Because I can't hear me. Application for the timber harvesting that's going to be at 393 Hobbs Lane and 339 Prospect Hill. I have some notes for the board. Now, I also have a letter from Pete Bove, who lives right next to where this is going to happen. He couldn't be here tonight, so he asked me if I could give a copy.
Thank you, sir.
I'll pass them
I'll
down.
pass them around.
And I don't know if there's enough, but
If not, we'll make copies.
we're concerned because the harvesting is going to be right on the road, right on Hobbs Lane. It's going to be, they're going to put a road through from Hobbs Lane into the area that they're going to forest. They have to cut down trees to get the road in there. And there's nothing in the application, or in the, I can see anywhere in the zoning that says they have to clean up after themselves. They have to put the road back in order, they have to do any of that stuff. I've kind of outlined that on my little thing here. They're going to harvest approximately 400 trees on 34 to 40 acres. And it's for a 2-year period of time, and it's not clear whether they're actually going to be doing it for 2 years or they're just giving themselves extra time to decide exactly when they want to do it. I think it's during the winter. One side of this large 500 acres, 500 plus acres, one side of it is marshland, and the other side, on the top of it, it's a hill, it's a steep hill. It's not flat land. They have to go up the hill. And, for example, Pete Bove's house is midway. It's next to this property, but it's midway up the hill. And they're going to be foresting or logging, whatever it's called, behind Pete's house. Already Pete has a retaining wall because the erosion on the soil is apt to come down to his house, which will come across the road and come into ours, which will not be good. The area on Hobbs Lake is rural, residential, but we're not 5 acres because we're kind of grandfathered in 2 acres, 3 acres. The current zoning code does not address any potential impact to the residents. It doesn't mention residents at all. I think there's a couple of codes that, excuse me, that have to be adhered to, but we haven't seen anything that has happened, that has been addressed by the building department, and we really want to know if those things have been looked into as far as the soil erosion or the environmental impact. And aside from that, the zoning code is very old. As we all know, the zoning codes are, and this is particularly 1997, and does not really reference anything. There are 10 statements of the zoning code that pertain to logging, and 7 out of the 10 just pertain to the application. What you put in the application doesn't talk about rules and regulations. And we think the zoning code really needs to be updated. We know once the master plan is, comprehensive plan, is updated, then you can do the zoning code. That's the other thing. There is no reference to logging in the comprehensive plan. Unless I missed it, but I don't think so.
You mean in the one we're working on?
The one you're working on, and the one we had in 2010, there is nothing in it that references mining, but I can't find anything on logging. And so I think it's really important that since the board is at the point of doing something with the comprehensive plan, that it also take a look at maybe putting in something about logging. We are residential, as I said, and very concerned because it's not happening out in the field. It's happening right next door to people. And we'd like the board to take note of this and get more information, excuse me, more information on the application before the application gets approved. It's my understanding the application has not been approved yet. Okay. That's my thing.
Okay, and you're done, that's
Huh?
I'm sorry, are you finished?
I'm finished.
Okay.
I just finished the meeting.
We will get started on this tomorrow morning.
I know that, and Nathan helped me out a lot with this yesterday, where all of the rules and regulations of the town on the E-code are. But the application has 15 days from the day it's put in or signed off or whatever to the building department to either be accepted or rejected. And if it's not, in 15 days, it automatically becomes the law or the whatever. And,
I mean, it's granted
Yep.
if it hasn't.
even if it's not granted, if you just put it on the side, you got 15 days.
I'm not sure if that's the case, Carol, but we can check that.
Hi, so I'll read the line. It says, if the application is complete and in compliance, the building inspector shall have 15 days to issue a permit or deny the same for being incomplete.
Oh, sorry.
In the event that the building inspector does not take any action, granting or denying the application within 15 days of the submission of the completed application, the application shall be deemed approved and the permit shall be issued. So that's item H.
And we're, you know, if the whole idea of the comprehensive plan is to make sure that we have a rural community and a rural environment, putting in logging in the middle of a residential area is probably not supportive of that. And I think that that really, somehow or other, has passed everybody by in all the work we've been doing on putting the plan together. And I think we really need to look at that. Okay?
Quick thinking. Thank you, Carol. Duffy, would you like to speak?
Please.
Definitely, I'm speaking again on the town of Stanford Fire Department. We started working on this quite a long while ago. We have a huge problem with the automatic fire alarms law that is over 20 years old. And to give you a brief example, last month we had 14 automatic fire alarm calls, all of which were false. Nationwide, 99% of automatic fire alarm calls are false. However, nationwide, between 80 to 90% of firefighter injuries are responding or returning from calls. So this presents a big problem and a safety problem. Not only does it present an alarm, a rollover problem, it's an automatic fire alarm, forget it, which is not what we want. They're there for a reason. These alarms can be adjusted so they're not put in the wrong places or not maybe quite as a sensitive alarm or whatever. We have proposed in this proposal a few changes in the law. Number one, to up the fines. If they have over 2 in a calendar year, you get a fine. So then, and unfortunately, it's not what we really want to do, but if you hit somebody's pocketbook, then they're going to change something. If it's just, oh, I'm sorry, and we're back again. So we put a bunch of proposals in there. One of the other things in there is that it was in the law in 2000, anybody puts a fire alarm in is supposed to get a building permit. We kept track of this for a month, about 5 or 6 months ago. Again, there was about 14 alarms for that month. One alarm had a building permit. Because you can buy these alarms online, install them on yourself, and it's just overtaxing the fire department as far as we want to help people, but we want to help them in an emergency, not in your bacon burned at 10 a.m. or it's 9:30 at night and your attic's closed and it's getting hot up there. So please, gave you what we're proposing. I know it's gonna take time. We all look through it and think about it, and your attorney to give it the right legal wording, but we appreciate whatever you can do for us. Thank you very much. On that note, one other quick note, fire department is having a Ukrainian dinner 17th. Gates open at 5, dinner at 6 at the Recreation Pavilion. This is to raise funds. We've already shipped 3,000 pounds of firematic gear and first aid material that is on a boat right now on its way to Poland. We've made contacts. We have a person that is going to pick that container up in Poland and take it 500 miles into Ukraine to his hometown and distribute it. None of this is to any government. 100% goes to 100% of the people there. Anything you people can do for us, we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And there's beer and wine.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Did you all write this, or is there like another town in the area
That was
has
pretty
done-
much what was written, and we just highlighted or changed a few things.
So like other towns in the county?
No, this was your law.
Oh, this is
2000.
our law that you would.
We changed some
And-
fines. A couple of the big things we put in was a definition for emergency.
Okay,
Also, if you have a electronic gate at your entrance to your premises, we put in there that it should be activated, open by your AFA, and stay open until either you or your caretaker closes it, and/or, and it's possible, be activated by the sirens of our emergency vehicles. Therefore, not politically correct, but I'm not known for that. We won't ruin your gates at your entrance, responding to your so-called emergency. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Duffy, I have another question. Duffy,
Yes,
is it, do you have a sense of, is it more residential or is it commercial or is it?
it's more residential, there is some commercial.
Okay.
An example, this past month, we had 3 alarms at Red Devon, boom, 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 within 2 days. Which got changed the name automatically, because it's not Red Devon, it's being leased. And I'm not the professional, I don't know, but we did notice they put another walk-in cooler inside the premises. And I think that's what the compressors, the heat, or whatever, was setting off their alarm. After 3, we have not had another one, but it seems to be a lot more residential than commercial, definitely.
Like people sometimes burn their bagels.
No, yeah,
I'm just admitting
And
it.
I know most of the dwellings in the town are primarily residential, but
Right.
I also wonder if there's something that,
And, the last thing we want is for all of our members to do a rollover. Oh, it's an automatic rollover. Forget it. That's not right. That's not why we're here. Yeah.
Duffy, some systems have a delay in sending the signal to the fire or police. In other words, if the homeowner hears the alarm and it's a false
By
one.
law, we have to respond. If the alarm goes in, we have to respond. That's the law, New York State law.
Wow.
Even if you call in and say, sorry, I burned my bacon. I don't know if that was you or that was me that wanted to burn your house down. Unfortunately.
It's a very quick trigger.
And that's the New York State law.
Thanks.
Any other questions, anybody?
Let's just thank those of all of you.
No, we're trying to make it right. We want to respond to the calls. But on the other hand, we want it safe for our members to respond to the real calls.
Right.
And well, not, last month we had 14 automatic fire alarms.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
None of them were real. None of them.
I'm glad that you guys, that this finally came together and we will.
And if any of you have any questions of changes or don't think it's appropriate or whatever, get a hold of me and I'll get a hold of my committee and we'll talk to you. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mesa.
Thank you.
Anybody else for privilege of the floor? Hello there, come on up.
My name is Sandra Dawson, and I live on Appalachian Lane, and I just want to discuss something about the conservation subdivisions. And if you're going to discuss that later during this meeting, I won't ask any questions now, because you may answer what my concerns are.
Well, why don't you wait till we open the public hearing, which will be very soon,
Okey-dokey.
and then you can be first up. Okey dokey. So is there anybody else?
I will, sure. So my name's Corey Clanahan. I live at 477 Hobbs Lane. I actually wasn't going to speak, but I guess that I will. We are going to be directly affected from the proposed harvesting of timber. It's right across the road from our house. I'm not against people doing what they want on their land within reason. Totally support that. I have no qualms with that whatsoever. Having gotten the notes from you guys, I'm very concerned that it defaults to just being approved. Seems a little crazy. If anything, it should default in the opposite manner. So, I was really coming tonight just to hear more information and get a little more well-informed before I began to speak and give my opinion and stuff like that. But I'm very concerned that it defaults to being approved, particularly when it sounds like we haven't been able to collect all the information that we need to in order to make an informed decision. So I am curious as if there is any course of action that we can do to put in some type of stopper to allow us more time to have a thorough investigation of the situation. And I guess that's really my question. Is there anything that we can do once the application is submitted, provided we don't pass anything in the meantime,
Right.
to allow ourselves more time to make a more informed decision, whether it be one way or the other?
I think we're bound by our code unless the applicant might consent to
And
additional time.
is there any sort of provision that would require some type of action? Like you have to make a decision one way or the other, or you can just kind of let it sit and then not be held accountable to that action? You didn't really do anything, so.
Well, actually, the application, if I understand all this correctly, is granted by the building inspector, our code enforcer, who unfortunately could not be here tonight to answer these questions. I will find out tomorrow morning where he is with that application.
But as of the moment, just to be clear, the application has not been approved at this point in time.
I wish I had the answer to that.
We don't
know.
know.
See that?
That is
I
not-
get that.
And-
But it concerns me that we don't seem to know that answer, and time is very much of the essence.
I agree.
If we wait till tomorrow, that's another day lost for the information gathering. And, go ahead.
I'm sorry, the date on the application says June 7th, so 15 days from that is certainly passed. So,
And did Don take action on it?
to my knowledge, no.
To my knowledge, and again, the reason why I'm hesitant to speak is because I tried to have this conversation here and it didn't happen. But I believe he did approve it, which in his capacity he is allowed to do if it meets whatever the zoning requirements are. That's my understanding. And so for me, the question is there, and this is just me thinking, is there a way to get the applicant together with the people whose lives are concerned and see what kind of mediation can happen that would address people's concerns? That's the only thing I can think of, since currently, if I'm correct, the zoning code is what it is.
Right.
And the building inspector, who's the code enforcer, I believe has approved the application. So since it also seems that logging has not begun, now carpe diem would be a good moment if we could get everyone involved together to figure out the best course of action for the neighborhood.
But in essence, there's not a course of action if it's already been approved, correct?
Well,
I mean, that-
has anybody asked the applicant, could they do X, Y, or Z? No, I mean, I even asked the code enforcer, what are the setback laws? Like if it's right on Mr. Bowes' property, are there setback regulations? And didn't get much of an answer, but what.
Which is really concerning. I mean, it sounds like it was approved, whether actually approved or just lack of action approved it.
No, I believe he approved it. What I'm saying is the only thing I can think to do at this point is to see if the people who are concerned, the people on Hobbs Lane, if we can get the applicant to sit down with everyone and listen to people's concerns and hopefully do his permitted lobbying in a way that least disrupts the people who are impacted.
Sure, and I agree, you know, obviously it would be great if she sat down, we powwowed and we all figured it out. But then in essence, it seems like, I know that there's more than just me in this crowd here for this reason. It seems like we're sort of spinning our wheels, that there's not, what can you guys do in this situation? It sounds like you don't really have much that you guys can do.
Not with the current code, if I understand correctly.
That's correct. It's really a ministerial approval. There are very few actual requirements in this, in the code section on water. And that's.
So essentially, our best bet is just to try and persuade the property owner to listen to our demands or concerns or whatever.
That would be
I mean, if I'm wrong in that, that's just how I'm feeling that it's shaping out. And I could be wrong, which I'm open to being wrong.
It says in the zoning code concerning logging that the town board has the responsibility for approving or not approving. But first it says the building inspector, absolutely right, Wendy. First of all, the building inspector. But it says the maintenance of the law itself is up to the town board. So it seems to me, if the town board does not want this to go through for various reasons, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, doesn't the town board have precedence over the building inspector?
Well, the town board has authority to enact laws, and we can change the local laws. There's a procedure for doing that. We can't do that like instantly or arbitrarily for a single application. We would have to do an amendment to the code, I believe, in order to change this law. Requires a meeting, a public hearing, and there are statutory procedures to follow to do so.
Well, I'm going to cede the floor because I don't need to stand there. Thank you, appreciate it.
Can I just ask a question without walking up there?
No, you must walk up.
Hey, I did, you got it.
All right.
It's the walk of shame.
My name is Anna Price, I live at 8 Old 82 Lane. My question is, aren't we going ahead soon to be voting on the comprehensive plan?
What we have been doing is workshopping to get the town board's input into the draft plan that we inherited from the Comprehensive Review Plan Committee. We are working as fast as we can to get through that document, and so that we're in as much agreement as we can as to what is in that plan. And then we better do this by the end of the year or I will shoot myself. Then we will pass it after we've come to our negotiations, and then there's a public hearing.
Okay, but my question here is, this issue, this 15-day issue that automatically reverts to an approval, is that something that can be changed in this code at this time?
Not at this time, but theoretically, within the code, it could be changed.
Yes.
But why not at this time, before we approve a new one?
Remember?
Oh, you mean in the plan? I'm sorry, I thought you meant tonight.
Because it's a zoning, remember we talked about this?
Yeah.
This is the comprehensive plan. When we pass it, then it goes into a zoning commission, and then the zoning commission will go over every piece of the zoning code just to make recommendations of where the zoning code, which is old, needs to be updated. But it's not part of the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan makes suggestions, it doesn't make zoning.
So zoning has a priority over the comp plan?
No. The comp plan is the gateway to opening up a zoning commission to take the comp plan, the suggestions of the vision in the comp plan, and then to rewrite zoning. I can't say in compliance, because a lot of what's in the comprehensive plan are suggestions. The zoning commission then takes that and runs with it. They write their own new zoning laws, and then they either get voted, or we have to still vote on them to pass them into law or not.
Well, let me just use this gentleman's example of what he's fighting right now. I completely understand why he's frustrated with all of this.
The whole Hobbs Lane is frustrated.
One common thread, I know we're all various stripes and everything, but one common thread is that, we did, I did receive the letter in the mail, stating what they were going to do and everything. But even at that time, this whole defaulting to approval with 15, it doesn't seem very transparent or allow much for any of us to really have a say in what is going to happen. And it sounds like, and I could be wrong, it sounds like we're sort of spinning our wheels. It sounds like it's already
So
happening.
how do you get beyond that? That's what he's asking.
Yeah, what is
And that's now
my
what I'm
recourse?
asking
Like,
also. How do we get
What can we
beyond
do
that 15
besides talk to
day?
the owner and be like, please don't?
I don't think, well,
That's what it sounds like we need to do, right? It sounds like.
Right, say please don't.
Right.
But, there's still enforcement at the local level and the state level. Whoever is logging still has to follow all New York State environmental law. So it's not just like the Wild West that there's no oversight. There still has to be enforcement of existing logging and environmental law, which I am not an expert on, but it's not just like there's nothing that happens, after this
But
point.
who is responsible for making sure that those laws are followed?
For the local law, it is our code
Sounds like they don't
enforcer,
have-
but for
Sounds like
New
they
York
don't.
State, it is the New York State Authority.
Right, so it's the building inspector.
For the local Stanford laws.
Right, because we have a local law about soil erosion,
Right.
which says it must be in compliance with the master plan. Believe it or not, it's actually in there. So I'm wondering if any of those things that are in there have even been looked at, let alone followed, in approving this application, and saying, okay, all these things are in order. If they're well.
We have some more people who want to come on.
Stephen,
Good evening, my name is Steve Horowitz, 6187 Route 82. My profession was spent as a real estate lawyer for more than 30 years, and so I am familiar with some of the land use laws. I'm not a logging expert by any means, but there is a long-established principle in New York law of nuisance law, and that applies in circumstances where one person is using their property lawfully. So for example, this person got a logging permit, let's assume that it was granted as Wendy's described. That does not mean that the person is authorized to impose nuisances on his or her neighbors. And that's, again, that's been part of New York law forever. So I'm not recommending litigation, but you are entitled if, for example, the logging operation caused erosion, which came over your retaining wall, knocked down your house, whatever, flooded the property. That's not a legally permissible use, even if it is pursuant to a logging permit. So I don't think that there is no recourse. It may be expensive, it may be a real hassle, but I at least wanted to make that comment to let people know that if the suggestion that you made, voluntary conversations, were to be pursued, for example, that legal consequence could be pointed out to the party that has the logging permit.
right.
And that would be consistent with what you're saying, Margaret, which is you can't log in a way that causes soil erosion, for example. And again, I don't know the logging rules, but I suspect that that is part of New York State logging law.
And
So-
there is wetland on their
Yes,
property,
there is.
so the
Another
yeah,
issue, so there may be recourse, obviously it'd be great if the town board could urge the parties involved here to convene voluntary conversations. But again, voluntary conversations are often more effective if the parties understand that there could be legal consequences if those conversations go nowhere.
I think that's hugely helpful, and when I didn't say this out loud, Corey, but, you know, you have been pretty dismissive of the approach of kumbaya, let's sit down together and try to work this out, but if there is legal leverage that you have, and you sit down, you know, and I'm happy to sit down with this group or anybody on the town board who's interested. And I think that, I mean, in my mind, this doesn't all have to go south. I think that especially with law behind you and the idea that there could be a lawsuit, you may end up getting a lot of what you need. So I'm really advocating that we try to do that. And the other thing I will do, first thing tomorrow morning, is have a conversation with our building inspector about some of these issues that have been raised.
The town board might wish to consider whether this circumstance calls for a mediator of some sort to sit down with the parties. That's another potential approach.
Can I just add that, sorry to keep it.
Carol, wait, I think there are other people who want to speak. Yes,
John also.
Tom Cronin, 354 Hobbs Lane.
What's the last name, I'm sorry?
Cronin, C-R-O-N-I-N. I never got the letter. So, it's my understanding that everyone whose property was next to this property should have gotten a letter, and I never received the letter.
What's your first name again?
Tom. So, we found out about this through our neighbor John
Right.
3 weeks ago, not in June. That's all I have to say.
When did, whoever got a letter, Carol, when did the letter go out?
About 3 weeks ago, Tom's right. We didn't know anything about this because it's got a June date, and then it's got a July date on another page of the application. But we didn't know anything about this until about 3 weeks ago, and we all talked to each other, and Tom was the one who said we never got the letter.
Okay? Thank you.
Yes.
John Hefner, Hobbs Lane, Town of Stanford. So I'd like to speak to what Ms. Fallon spoke about, and I think there's some confusion as to who's doing what and what the rules are. You know, I've spoken to the DEC. There are wetlands, but they don't need a special permit for these wetlands. They don't need a Class C license for these wetlands. So the DEC is not concerned about what this logging company is going to do. So the question is, who's going to go in there and make sure that the logging company is doing what they say they're going to do? And I think from everything I've heard tonight, we don't know that. You know, we don't know if Don is going to go in and what his experience is with logging, if he knows a maple from a hickory or a Dutch elm. We don't know that. So there is some confusion, and it needs to be settled. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just say one thing? I promise I'll be quiet. I'm sorry, Linda.
Go for it, Carol.
I just know.
If you could work that out, I would be.
I just wanted to point out that the application itself says they're going to start logging October 1st.
November 1st.
Yeah, no.
November 1st?
November.
Sorry, November 1st. So we don't have that much to leeway.
Well, we've got a little, and,
Okay.
But
yes,
just, I thought your idea of joining the group was a marvelous one. I may be the closest neighbor, and I'd be happy to join you in that effort, or be helpful. I think everyone understands that this is like a log fell on us as well. We didn't know until just a few days ago that this was occurring. And obviously, the horse has left the barn, and we need to repair that barn when we get to the first opportunity to change our ordinances, no question. But I think if there's some intervention now, we can be of assistance, perhaps with some legal help in that, from the town's attorney, or at least in the background helping us. So I think if we do work together, and thank you for the suggestion, there may also, I'm sorry I didn't lead with this, if in fact the board is aware that some people weren't given the proper notice, perhaps, Counselor, this board can implement a stay of some sort, because we have received informal information that they have not followed the procedure of notifications. Would that be possible?
I couldn't say, but I can look into it.
It also depends if the letter was sent and if it was returned, that still falls under a category where it's been received.
I know, I did stop in at the building inspector's office last week, I think, and I know that proof of mailings was submitted, but I didn't check any lists or anything like that, so I couldn't verify if someone was missed.
Well, I guess the question, in addition to your assistance, to Wendy, and if I can be of help as the closest neighbor, but also if you could look into whether the board has the authority, based upon what it's heard, to issue a stay on that, simply to ensure that at least the laws that we have on the books, even though they may be inadequate, that they have been fulfilled completely.
Okay.
Is that possible, Wendy?
Oh, well, it's certainly possible for Bob to find out.
Great. Right, thank you.
I will say, tomorrow morning I will get the name. I will try to, well, first of all, I'll speak to Don Smith. No, Charlie. And then, and then I will get the name of the applicant, and I think I may try to start an initial dialogue. But Charlie, would you like to speak?
Just a moment, I think, I don't know if I have any time left. Charles Hamlin, 422 Hobbs Lane, and I've been there since 76.
Is that 1872?
Yes. I just wanted to find out, point of order. The gentleman here, Nathan, excuse me, had said that the approval of this was on what date?
Well, I didn't say what the approval date was. I was reading the top of that handwritten application that said 6/7. But that's, I don't know if that was part of the submission or if that was when the date was written. That was just the date that was written on that document. And I don't know when it was approved.
It was applied for when?
That's what I don't know. That was
See,
the question for Don.
we may have some leverage even if Don approved it, which I still believe he did, but if letters weren't sent out until 3 weeks ago, like if they were sent out after the fact, then I would hope that would be a point of disorder, that could be actionable. So I think we need to do some fact gathering now. And, maybe, I don't even think it's a technicality. You don't pass something, you don't approve something before the neighbors have been notified. It's backwards. So just let us do a little fact gathering ourselves. And maybe it would be a good idea if everybody here who's been concerned about this leaves us a way of getting in touch with you, your email or whatever, so that we can at least update you on where we are in our process.
All right, last thing I would mention, it seems to me, I read in the letter from these people that they were going to have skid roads or something coming down to Hobbs Lane, a minimum of 2. My question, this sounds like it's also a highway department situation, doesn't it? Where you have they checked to see if there's a long enough line of sight there for that? Hobbs Lane has become, since the closing of some of the parkway roads, a very busy road. So my concern is for the safety of the people on Hobbs Lane and the safety of the people driving. And I will now prove that a Hamlin can sit down.
Is there anybody else who'd like to speak at this first privilege of the floor? Okay, then I will close. This is great, we've never had such an active privilege of the floor. Oh,
It makes up for Tuesday night.
True. Okay, then, the next thing I need to do is make a motion to approve the agenda. I have no additions.
Yes. I beat you, Margaret, sorry. All in favor? Aye.
Now, I'm going to make a motion, tell me if I'm correct, Rita, to close the general meeting and to open up the public hearing for proposed local law number 2 of 2022. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So this public hearing is on proposed local law number 2 of 2022, amending various sections of chapter 140 of the town code entitled subdivision of land with respect to private roads, homeowners associations, and conservation density subdivisions. By Hamlin.
Can't even sneak out.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you. Bye. Bye, Roberta. And I think before we open the public hearing, it might be helpful if our attorney gives a slight overview. Is that what you're going to do?
Sure, I can do that.
Okay, of the intention of this proposed local law.
This proposed local law is basically represents a few technical corrections to the town subdivision code. And it deals largely with conservation density subdivisions and private roads that might be associated with conservation density subdivisions. Now, a conservation density subdivision is a special section in the town subdivision code, and they're designed to encourage preservation of open space and protection of agricultural land by limiting the residential development of a large parcel. These proposed amendments clarify some of the provisions, and they remove some inconsistency among the provisions in the subdivision code that pertain to this. Unfortunately, this happens from time to time that we find that in drafting the code there are sometimes some inconsistencies between two provisions, where one provision says one thing and another provision says something that might be contradictory. And this came up in the course of the planning board's review recently of the application of Rocky Reef Farm and Helen Blodgett for a conservation density subdivision of Rocky Reef's property on Route 82. And this led to some complications in the review and some debate between the applicant and the planning board about these contradictory provisions. And we've had some meetings to go over this, and the planning board would like to see the applicant would like to see these provisions clarified and corrected. So it's not the intention that this will make any great substantive changes in what is permitted and what's not permitted. I can go into some of some of the issues that are addressed. I mean, just for example, one provision is, there's one section that says that a homeowners association is required if you have a private road. One of the things about, sort of as a trade-off for this preservation of open space in a conservation density subdivision, is that the applicant is permitted to have a private road to serve these lots. And under current code, they can serve up to 8 lots on a private road. And one question is whether a homeowners association is required. There's one section that says that a homeowners association is required, and another section that says a homeowners association or another mechanism that's approved by the town board, or by the planning board and the town attorney would be acceptable. So which provision do we follow? We're trying to resolve ambiguities, conflicts like that. So that's really what this is about.
What's the purpose for it?
I'm
Excuse
sorry,
me?
could we, like,
I'm sorry.
and then there'll be a public
So
hearing and you can...
that's the, well, that's just basically an overview of the code.
Okay, thank you, Bob. So I promised you would be the first speaker. Okay, so come on up, take your turn.
I still am Sandy Bilski, I still live in Aberdeen.
Welcome.
And I have a brief couple of questions I have to do with just for that, this town subdivision. I see where it's allowed that the town planning board has the discretion to allow another mechanism to be put in place other than a homeowners association. Does this apply to only the conservation subdivision or any private road within the town?
I think the code provision makes, there's a general provision that relates to private roads, and another provision that relates to conservation subdivision, and we're trying to make them both work together with the same provisions, yes.
In section 5J of what your handout has, it says that the homeowners association or the other mechanism would also have the power to assess the subdivision lot owners for their share of the maintenance cost of the private road. And I wonder how are those assessments for cost determined? Is it by the acreage of the lot? Is it by the road frontage? Or is it divided by share of the number of the lot owners in that piece of property?
It could be done any way the owners want to do it. As
So
long as
owners can decide for themselves how they want it?
Yes, they could. Or the subdivider who's creating the subdivision could set this up. What we have to be sure is that there is a way to apportion the costs fairly among the lot owners, and that there's a mechanism to require them to pay it, so that the maintenance is covered.
So because obviously there could be quite a bit of argument, because some people have only a very small piece of land that is on road frontage, other ones have quite a bit of frontage, and so I'm sure that they would like equality rather than the frontage. So I mean, I can see there being a discussion of which way is selected, and so who has the town board have the final decision, or the planning board have the final decision?
The planning board has to review it, and the planning board has the ultimate authority to approve the subdivision. And as part of the review process, the applicant will have to provide a document, probably a declaration that will be recorded in the county clerk's office, and that will bind all of the lots in the subdivision, and will set forth what the mechanism is and what share each lot owner pays. Do they all pay equally, or do they pay based on length, or whatever? We don't really, we wouldn't really care what the developer, the subdivider wants to do, or what the lot owners want to do, but it becomes a contract between the lot owners as to how they share it.
The other, I'm not sure how this would even, if it's important or not. That, the area of driveways coming out onto Aberdeen Lane, there are 5 people that have lots that come out onto that even driveway. However, there are 2 other lots that abut Aberdeen Lane, but one has a driveway that comes out onto Conklin Hill, the other has a driveway that comes out on Old Conklin Hill. If either one of those home lot owners just would decide they'd like to be able to use Aberdeen Lane, they'd like a back driveway or something, one of them has horses and maybe they'd like the horse trellis to be able to get in off Aberdeen Lane rather than Conklin Hill Road. Would this prohibit them because that would increase the number to over 8? The limit of 8 would be then.
Well, Aberdeen Lane is a private road, and we have been told that the lot owners don't have rights over that road. Those existing lot owners. So I don't know. There is a limit as to the number of approved lots that can use a private road.
And is that all the private roads are restricted to 8 lots?
That's what the code currently provides, yes.
Well, then that is interesting. So we could be stopped from using that our driveways out onto Aberdeen Lane by what would stop us?
I can't, I mean, I'm not the planning board, but I can't imagine that if there's an existing driveway that's using Aberdeen Lane, that it's going to be prohibited.
Well, I've been using it since
The planning board is not going to do that. The question is, what private rights, what easement rights do lot owners have over that road? And I can't answer that question.
I've never thought of that in the 40-some years that I've lived there. But should my house is on 3 different roads. It's on Aberdeen, it's on Old Conklin Hill, and it's on Conklin Hill Road. Maybe I should apply for having a drive right off of Old Conklin Hill Road for access to my home and get out of this whole subdivision completely.
I can't give you any legal advice on that, but
This has been helpful.
I'm sure that the planning board is not going to do anything to diminish your rights.
Well, I hope.
I'm certain of that.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, sir.
Oh, put John in first.
John Hefner, Town of Stanford, Hobbs Lane. I'm not going to speak about logging. I am going to address the Rocky Reef subdivision. Now, having been brought up and raised in Dutchess County, and whenever I hear subdivision, that kind of, raises my hackles a little bit. So I did look at the subdivision, and I don't claim to be a land surveyor. I don't claim to be anything but a resident of Dutchess County. What does concern me is the timing of this event. So I have looked at the records, I've gone through the supervisor's minutes, and what I'm going to say is not popular, but I have to say it. Looking at the timing, it seems to me that after a large donation was received by the town, and I'm assuming Helen Blodgett and Helen Cook are the same person. So I see that donation, I see the subdivision, and now we have a law that's up to be changed. And that's my concern. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kathy Zier. 158 Shelley Hill Road, and I'm also the chairperson for the Zoning Board of Appeals in Stanfordville. I have some questions, and I have a couple of statements about this proposed law. I'm speaking for myself, not for my town, the board, because we had no knowledge of this being drafted, and we have not been able to have a board meeting since this came out from your last town board meeting. The zoning board was not included in any discussion of this changing of the town code, which is a little disturbing to me. First off, my question is similar to John's. What's the urgency on piecemealing changes to the master plan right now? We need to get the master plan through. We need to have a concept for the town. And right now, what is the urgency in this? And I understand John's concerns. This does not stand alone in changes to the code. It impacts other areas of the code. Even though it's a private road, making some changes in this, you should also consider how does it affect common driveways, which allow 4 homes. How does it impact commercial access? Because when you are using these private roads for the wording that I found, accessory uses, some of the accessory uses in town are commercial, light industrial, light manufacturing, churches, museums. That's not addressed. But private roads, where the other wording said for private homes, the new wording that I could find, and I have to say, it was very difficult because I did not know what was changed from the old code, and I went through my books, and it took me a long time to figure out what wording was changed. It would have been helpful to know what the original was and where the change is. So when you start using private roads with accessory uses, which was supposedly something added, you're changing the character of the road from residential to possibly commercial. And with special permits, light industry, manufacturing, home professions, museums, churches, etc. So I don't think these changes were well thought out in the scope of the whole master plan. I think more research needs to be done. I need to see how it impacts driveways, what type of curbing. You know, when you're talking about roads, I was on the committee probably 10 years ago where we rewrote the code for the town roads. And that took a lot of time to figure out the difference between what a private road should have as far as shoulders, elevation, town roads, private roads. Because the code at that time, Stanfordville was only allowed to build roads to state specs with the huge shoulders, the huge setbacks. So I think it's not appropriate right now to make any changes to this, and that's my opinion as ZBA chairperson. I would like to bring it up to my committee at our next meeting, which isn't until next week. But again, unfortunately, it's become a habit of us, the zoning board, being left behind in a lot of these discussions about changes. And with the master plan committee, we had no representation on that for the last master plan committee. I was on the master plan committee 10 years ago also, the first master plan committee after the first readjustment.
You mean the review? The last committee was just the review?
Yes, the review committee. We did one, when did we do that, Mark? Gosh. 10, 12 years ago? Something like that.
I think more like 8. We were dismissed by the previous board.
Without any real determination. So really, going forward, I would really hope that any changes are made looking at the whole master plan. And the last thing I wanted to do, I wrote myself notes, accessory uses are going to change under the new master plan. I'm sure they are, because I know the zoning, I know what's allowed in certain areas, what's not allowed. We need to update them. So with the wording of private roads with residential and accessory uses, you don't even know what you're approving. I think we need to look at the total concept first. So that's my input.
Thank you, Kathy. Yes.
I'm Joan Cairns, I live at 79 Rock Top. We're part of a 4-lot homeowners association with a private drive. And I really just have a question on if somebody could give me an example of what other mechanism acceptable to the planning board and town attorney might look like. And, you know, because I don't understand that. Is that a separate?
It would probably be similar to what the town requires for a common driveway, which would be a declaration binding all of the lot owners, all of the affected lot owners, which would create a mechanism to have a budget for maintenance and a method for deciding what maintenance to perform on the road. Would require that it be maintained so that everybody had good access, and there was good access by emergency vehicles, and would provide for the costs of the maintenance to be covered by the lot owners, and would provide a mechanism for enforcement if the lot owners failed to pay their proportionate share.
So if we're happy with our covenant and our maintenance agreement and we're keeping the road clear, there shouldn't be any issue?
That's the objective, yes.
Okay, just checking.
Definitely.
And then following up on the accessory, that was the only major verbiage change that I could find when I was looking. And again, you know, what we've always been used to we've got sites and whatnot, and I didn't know what that permitted accessory uses per approved lot would, you know, an example of that would be.
Well,
Is it a horse stable, or is it, you know?
The reason for that change is that, again, there were inconsistencies in the provisions. And in one spot, it says that the lot can be improved by only one single-family dwelling. So does that mean that they have an accessory use like a detached garage or a shed on the property, or a swimming pool, or any of the other normal things that a single-family owner might typically have on their lot? And I think it was probably the intention that yes, it's going to be a single-family lot, but it's but not to just limit it to the residence itself and not have anything else that would normally go with the residence.
So shouldn't the language be accessory buildings and not accessory uses? If you're talking about like a garage or I don't know if you can call it a swimming pool, but a building, but it sounds like there's a problem with that term.
How about a home occupation, for example?
What does that mean?
Well, like someone has a workshop in their home or something like that, or
but there should be a way to make it clear. I mean, even in the new comprehensive plan, there's language that addresses home occupations. It doesn't define all of them, but one prerequisite is that they can't change the nature of the neighborhood.
That's true.
Right. So.
And in those cases, there's a permit, a special permit procedure with the planning board, so they review that.
So all I'm saying is, Kathy brought up the use of the word auxiliary, help me here.
Accessory uses.
Accessory uses are uses of structures, they're not structures. And, oh, thank you. And for home professional offices are permitted without special permit in all areas of our zoning code right now. So you could have a home professional office with no oversight, basically.
Thank you.
So use is definitely not a swimming pool, it's not a garage, it's a use. You have a profession, you have a business, you have a, I don't know, you know.
Well, I guess that's why I'm saying, why is the word accessory use as opposed to accessory building? That's
Well, it may be something that we'd like to look at further.
I know my good friend Paul Coughlin, who's truly my good friend, would say, don't say anything, but I do feel compelled to address what you said. I started as supervisor 2.5 years ago, and one of my first liaison jobs was with the planning board. So 2.5 years ago, I went to my first planning board meeting, and people from Rocky Reef were there with asking for a subdivision for 4 houses, I think on 25-acre lots. And at first there was discussion about, well, where the houses were going to be sited, even though no one really could see that property from anywhere. And the planning board asked the applicants, which are the 4 children of Helen Blodgett Cook, if they would consider relocating the house sightings. And they did. They got together, they all did a walkthrough, and they complied with the planning board. And then 2.5 years later, they were still struggling with access to this property, which is owned by Helen, that her 4 children wanted to buy houses on. And there were conflicting, it's like if this was the solution, then this piece of the code made it impossible to do that. I was approached by the Cooks and asked if the board would just accept Aberdeen Road as a town road. And I said no, because that becomes a cost in perpetuity to the taxpayers, the maintenance of, if we had taken on that road, which would have been a solution, according to the planning board, but we said no. So finally, when the planning board sat down with the engineers, the town engineer, the planning board engineer, the Helen's engineer, and the attorneys, tweaking the code, which, with respect to Kathy, and I'm not, you're the expert on the code, I am not, I admit that, but making these what seem to be acceptable corrections to disparate parts of the same code solved the problem. It had, and I will just say this, nothing to do with the fact that the Cooks made a donation for the pickleball courts and have been incredibly active in helping to raise money for the rec. If this was Duffy Layton's property, I do not believe that comment would be made, or if it was Don Bird, who's lived here since time immemorial. But my sense is, all I can say is this was not politically motivated, and it was not because of a donation. I think, and will probably have us thinking, like looking at this more closely. I believe the board has no intention of voting on this tonight because we have things to discuss. But I would just like to publicly say this has nothing to do with a pickleball donation. It's a way to try to solve a problem that I know has been going on for 2.5 years, and may be, clearly it didn't start the day I became supervisor. So it's been a long-standing issue, and I hope that we, as a town, find a way to rectify it.
Yes, I could make one more suggestion on the draft, and maybe I could, sorry, have nothing to do with private roads or anything else, but just listening, it occurred to me you may also want to put in some definition that you can't have light industry in there. You can't have a garage or something like that. That's something really for the planning board, but it's just something I heard when you talked about buildings versus whole businesses. You also may want to clarify uses that you really don't want on these private roads, and that's it.
Thank you, Julie. Yes.
Hi, I'm Carol Friedman, I'm St. Bernard Way. So just a couple of questions. Does this, do these kinds of changes apply to a private drive as well as a private road? Because I didn't see anything about a private driveway in here.
I'm not sure what the difference would be, or whether that term implies a separate category. I don't know that the term private drive is currently a part of the subdivision code. It may, I know that St. Bernard Way goes back many years. I think back to the 1980s.
Yeah.
And the terminology may have been different then. So I don't know that there's a particular distinction, and I'm pretty sure that the code was different when St. Bernard Way was created.
Well, I think as Kathy said, there's a different number of houses that can be there, different buildings that can put on a drive and
there's a category called a common drive.
Okay, maybe that's what it is.
And the road specs for a common drive are a little lesser than the road specs for a private road. And there are some other differences between the two of them. A common driveway can serve not more than 4 residences.
Okay.
And a private road could be up to 8.
Okay, so I guess then the question would be though, if maybe my terminology is wrong, it's a common drive, I guess, versus a private road. If these kinds of things, these changes apply to the common drive, they don't.
It's my understanding that they don't.
It's only to a private road.
I think it proposes one change in provision for common. Let me check.
Yeah, it's the last.
Yeah, the last one, and really it's just to create. Really, that's just a minor change in the wording that doesn't really have any substantive change, but it makes the paragraph similar to the paragraph for private roads, and it kind of clarifies the wording, because it didn't read very well in its original version.
But it doesn't change the number.
It doesn't change the number or any of the technical parameters of the specifications or anything like that.
And then just a sort of a clarification, whether it's a common drive or a private road, if there is like one lot, let's say there's a lot that's a large lot of, let's say 50 acres, that is a lot that's going to be subdivided, but there are other lots, other homes that also share that private road or common drive. How does that work with the homeowners association? Because let's say that one lot then gets subdivided to 8 homes, or let's say 6, because there's 2 other, let's say there's 2 other lots or 2 other homes on that private road. What happens to those 2 people who are 2 homes that are now outnumbered by the 6 other lots or whatever, that want to do this homeowners association?
Okay, so if I understand the question, the scenario would be there's already a common driveway with a couple of owners off it, but some other owner wants to do an 8-lot subdivision and create a private road So now there are 10 people using this private road.
Right, well,
And-
let's, yeah, so
and I-
let's keep it the same 8. So let's say there's two people that are not part of this lot that's going to be subdivided. So this lot can now be subdivided into 6, right, to get a total of 8.
Okay, so it's a total of 8.
Yeah, but there are
Total of
6.
8 would be permitted.
Right, but there are.
I mean, it's similar to the situation on Aberdeen Lane, because there are already a couple of lot owners that are using Aberdeen Lane. And you wouldn't want to have more than 8 residences using that private road.
Right, no, I understand that, but what I'm trying to get at is, let's say there's a total of 8, there's 6 of whom come from this subdivision, and 2 are already living there, right?
Mhm.
So the 6 in the subdivision want to have a homeowners association. What to do whatever they do with the road? What happens to the 2 people who are not part of that subdivision and don't want to, let's say they don't want to have a homeowners
They
association?
can't be joined, 2 points. They can't be forced to join the homeowners association. And their existing rights to use the road cannot be denied if they have existing deeded rights.
I see, okay, great, thank you.
Oh, Mark, did you give your hand up?
Mark Burdick, 19 Burdick Way. I'm not going to speak to the timing of the proposed law, and I know there may be some words that need to be changed, but in general, it sounds like they're trying to quantify that either the planning board can require an HOA or there is a different type of maintenance agreement that might be allowed. So I am in favor of the law if that's what it's going to do. HOAs are, in my opinion, are ridiculous. They're very expensive, and anything you can do to make it more affordable for the Forever Cook or anybody else. We need to focus on trying to make things more affordable in town. There's a lot of parts of the code that need to be reviewed. And I'm in favor of doing them piece by piece if we have to. We can't wait for the comp plan. So I'm in favor of cutting costs for developers so kids can afford to build here. So that's what I gotta say.
Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
Is this limited just our discussion on buildings and the regulations to the building? I've got a concern about the drainage of water. Is this appropriate to discuss at this point in that same property area?
Do you mean, there's this, oh, you go for it.
Is it okay?
Drainage,
Yeah.
there is this subdivision application that's pending, and engineering things like drainage are part of what the planning board reviews in the context of the subdivision. So it's a very relevant topic, but it's not really a town board issue, it's really more a planning board issue. And there will be hearings in the planning board, and the meetings are open to the public, and I'm sure that, you know, the planning board would encourage you to.
You wouldn't want to hear it now.
Well, it's up to the board, but it's just that it's not, it's up to you, Randy.
Let's hear it. I'll be quick. Well, Conklin Hill is way above us. Conklin Hill, all the water drains down Conklin Hill. And Conklin Hill goes right out to 82, but the water doesn't. The water makes a turn when it hits Old Conklin Hill Road, goes underneath Conklin Hill Road, comes down a little bit, maybe 2 or 3 car lengths, and makes another turn underneath Old Conklin Hill Road and drains out in the first lot on Aberdeen Lane. That is, it goes that way, and in the spring, it's really torrential. And unfortunately, the town has been nice, and they've dug a big hole for that all to fall into. But very often when there's a lot of rain, that hole gets filled up quickly and it overflows Aberdeen Lane and drains itself into my yard. And I just think that somehow, maybe it would have to go underneath one driveway on Conklin Hill Road for it to drain all the way down out to Route 82, rather than making a U-turn to come back around. Like 2 left-hand turns within just the space of this room.
Let me talk to Jim Myers about that.
Okay.
Okey-doke.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes.
Hi. Hi, I'm Paul Corderell, represent Helen and Everett Cook. They couldn't be here tonight, so they asked me to attend and read a letter to the record that they drafted. So I'll just read that for you. Dear town board members and members of the community here tonight, on behalf of Rocky Reef LLC, I wanted to provide some context for our request that this zoning change be passed. In simplest terms, its passage will correct a defect caused by the current arrangement that occurred many years ago when certain lots were created and building permits were issued, perhaps inappropriately. This proposed change to the town's zoning code will allow for a private drive such as Aberdeen Lane to serve 8 lots instead of the current 5 it is now serving. 4 of those lots belong to unrelated parties and 1 belongs to Rocky Reef. This change will only be applicable for conservation subdivisions such as the one we are proposing. Conservation subdivisions must average 25 acres per lot. Please note Aberdeen Lane is owned solely by Rocky Reef. Without documented access to all lot owners and no driveway maintenance agreement. Extensive title searches have confirmed these facts. You may ask why this should concern our community. Principally, the change will allow us to create 3 more building lots for my wife's children, giving us a total of 4 buildable lots, each 25 acres. As part of this process, access will become a deeded right and a formal driveway maintenance agreement will be put in place that will require compliance by the 4 new lot owners. As such, continued maintenance will be required by these new lot owners solely at their cost. The 4 unrelated lot owners will not have to bear any cost similar to their current situation. Without this change, there will be no incentive for Rocky Reef to maintain Aberdeen Lane, and as such, over time, it will become impassable. Furthermore, legal access may be questioned by the title company, which could affect the ability to convey or mortgage a property currently owned by the 4 unrelated lot owners. With the appreciation for the town's careful consideration of this request, I am sincerely Henry Cook.
Thank you.
Do you have copies for me and the board of that?
I can give you my copy, or I can send
I'll
you
make
some
copies for the
tomorrow.
board, okay?
I said, please.
Yes, honey.
I received a copy of that letter from Mr. Cook. I got it on the 4th of September. I don't know when he left it in my mailbox. It wasn't sent through the mail. I just found it in the mailbox. And that one paragraph that you just read, I wasn't going to make this letter public, but since you did, I got very concerned about the paragraph that reads that legal access may be questioned by the title company, which could affect your ability to convey or mortgage your property. I'd like to really know what the legal ramifications mean about that. That frightens me, actually. And I consider it a threat to encourage me to come and support this. And I wasn't going to make it public. I felt that that wasn't the way to work. But I really feel, and I don't know who else received it. So, I only know one other neighbor who told me she didn't, and she's been ill and away from her home, so she doesn't know what mail has come in or not. But we didn't get any advance notice, and you were talking about people not being notified of something that where their trees are being logged or something, but this wasn't an advance notice.
Well, just to try to answer your question, the title search that we had performed shows that none of these lots on Aberdeen Lane were ever conveyed any access or right or easement to those lots over Aberdeen Lane. So if you go back and look at the original subdivision, which I have a copy of, it mentions no easement rights or anything with respect to Aberdeen Lane. I think that's because the subdivider expected to dedicate that road to the town and be maintained by the town. Why do I say that? Because if you look at the map, it references other easements and rights of way in the map. Something happened where a right was never conveyed to those lot owners to access their property over Aberdeen Lane. Aberdeen Lane is solely owned by Rocky Reef Farm. They have been maintaining it since they've owned it. They plow it and they fix the potholes and they do it all at their own expense, okay? They've never asked anybody for a nickel. They've never told anybody they can't use the road. They have no intention of doing that.
Well, none of us ever knew they owned it. I mean, I certainly have known.
Well, why would you care? It's not like, the town's not out, plowing the road or maintaining the road. They're acting like the town. So if you take the expense that they incurred over the past 30 years, plowing and maintaining for you, understand that that's typically an expense shared by all the lot owners, not just the Cook family. So this actually benefits you because what's going to happen is they're going to build the road to this town specs, they're going to maintain it, and they're going to give you deeded access to your driveways, to Aberdeen Lane.
Well, I'm going to see who in the town I requested a driveway permit off of Conklin Hill Road.
When did you build your house?
And I have a house that was originally built, it was the first one built, and we moved in May of 1976.
Okay, so it's probably when they were first subdivided.
Absolutely.
Okay. All I can tell you is, now, a title company, if you went to sell your house, a title company would say, here's your driveway, show me your access to the public road. And you would say, I don't have a deeded access to the public road.
Well, but what about Conklin Hill and Old Conklin Hill?
Sure, you can go on to Conklin Hill and Old Conklin Hill. But not Aberdeen.
See in the town to do it beginning tomorrow or Monday.
So what this does is, this mechanism allows Rocky Reef to build a road and to maintain the road and to continue to do that at their cost. So it benefits you.
I don't know that, because two landowners have just recently bought their house. And I don't know how they got mortgages then, if they couldn't
I didn't
show
see
deeded
that.
access.
Maybe they had access off of Conklin or Old Conklin, but there is nothing in there that gives you a right to use Aberdeen Lane at all.
Interesting.
Could I just make one comment? I just have a question on that. Being that it's been many years that they've maintained the road, with the knowledge that these houses do not have legal access, why is it now an issue? That's my question. I mean, I don't know the whole story, but isn't there adverse ownership, adverse rights?
You know what, if someone wants to bring an action in court and demand that they have an easement by necessity or an easement by use or that, go for it, see what happens. I certainly wouldn't recommend anybody do that. you know, this works out for you. You get a maintained road. You know, Mr. Cook could say, I'm doing this, I want everybody here who's the 4 lot owners to join in the maintenance and care of this road.
His
He's not
vehicles
asking you
are
to do
the
that.
only ones that go up and down that road 50 times a day also.
I'm sorry?
I say his vehicles are the only ones.
Well,
that
he operates a farm there, there's a hay operation.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm gonna stop this conversation now. If anybody else has something to add, please do, but the town board has a lot to think about. I think we would like very much to hear the input from the zoning board of appeals. And Kathy, you're meeting next week?
Next week, yes.
Okay,
I would like to be formally asked, so we have it in writing, please.
Formally asked what?
That you want us to review this law.
I will
So
formally.
we can put it on our agenda, yeah.
Yeah, well, can I do that right now?
So, and I just need it written till I have it to add to the agenda and then add to our records.
Okay. But just, I think if there's no other comments, public comments, that I think it's time to close the public hearing. Did you have anything you wanted to say? Okay. All right, then I make a motion to close the public hearing. Second. She seconded it very quietly, so that's heard it.
All in favor?
Aye. I now make a motion to reopen the regular town board meeting with new business. I believe, as a board, we would like to not take any action on proposed law number 1. Okay. So now, 14 hours later, I invite our town assessor, Steve Godovich, to make a short presentation on exemptions.
Yeah, I want to apologize before. It's something to myself doing my stretches this morning. I am not doing well.
Steve, do you want to
That's
do
what you
this?
did get for trying to be healthy.
Steve, do you want to do this next month?
No, I would like
Sat
to.
here for 2 hours.
No, it's going to be short and sweet. Yeah, I'm Steve Godovich. I'm the sole appointed assessor for the town of Stanford. And it recently come to my attention that the state of New York legislated some legislation that allowed for towns that have opt-in laws to review their laws, and they changed different parameters that are allowed. I think the first page you guys received from Wendy was a nice little compilation and clip notes of what's going on here. The second and third things are the topics of conversation. And the fourth thing package is exemptions currently on the books for the town of Stanford. So now, basically, they're allowing the towns to look at their low-income exemptions. And after maybe, I think it's 20 years, they have decided to allow towns to change some of the parameters involved, both minimum incomes and maximum incomes, and certainly is needed because today's dollar is not as strong as the year 2000 dollars. So it's a good program. I wanted to introduce it to the town board. I'm here to be proactive, and I have time to grind this out with you guys for as long as it takes. But I do believe if you do your homework and consider it a little bit, this exemption, these exemptions, low-income seniors and low-income disability, are granted to those of us with the least in the community. And I don't know how anybody with a household income can afford to live around here. 50,000, never mind 30,000, but the little marginal increase to adjust this law is virtually inconsequential to the average homeowner, because if they get exempted a little bit more, it's just spread out amongst everybody else a little bit more, and I don't think the average homeowner, the average home in Stanford, which is about $350,000, I don't think it would add $2 to their yearly bill. Again, this is a marginal increment increase to a marginal exemption. And if you look at your exemption page, the last one, you can see I outlined them in yellow, and all the other exemptions that are granted, you can notice that those low income exemptions are a very small portion of real property that's exempted and passed around to the rest of the people. So, again, I'm proactive here today. I'm introducing this to the town board. I think you guys sound like you got plenty on your plate, especially I don't need an answer tomorrow morning at 8 a.m.
Good, thank you.
So I will be working with Wendy and however committee or Bob, you'd have to get in and figure out how to do this and legalese if it's so desired, but as a citizen, I highly recommend it.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
On the last chart, on line 41800 and then 801 and 803, they all say persons age 65 or older. So what is the difference between those three lines?
All right. I referred you to the Dutchess County low seniors exemption.
Okay.
Who we got. And you'll notice that there's all different rates for different taxing jurisdictions. This exemption is administered by me, I verify it, but you notice that I have to make sure that every county, town, and school have different rates. So that's why there's 3 different disabled, because some people qualify for a town exemption, but not a school exemption. So those 3 lines are really one line. And they're not repetitive at all. They're different households. And I would like to add at the end that if the town board would consider making these changes that will formulate, it will not burden my office when I order to an administrator. All these calculations I had to pass to get certified, but really all I have to do now is determine income and put it in the box on the computer that figures all that stuff out. So again, as a citizen, I highly recommend it, and as a assessor, it's indifferent. I'll go whatever you want. It doesn't affect my job at all. All right, so we'll be working on this. Right.
Thanks, Steve. This is all really good material. With respect to the income levels, I'm not quite sure if I understand what those lines, 41,800, 01, or 3, where does it identify what the income levels are?
On the seniors and the low income ables that I gave you.
Yep.
They have the approved limits on all different jurisdictions. Then you take those numbers, and by the way, there's options that we should consider also. On the back page, you take those incomes and stick it into that sliding scale. So you can see that there are different minimums, there's different maximums, but it all has to do with the M ceiling, which is actually the 2,400.
Is that 27,000, 24,000?
Yeah, that would be low. Actually, some towns even adopt it higher. But so this would be a study and a reevaluation and a recommitment to the town for the low income laws that the legislature just allowed us to do. So again, it's proactive. This is all opt-in, which is not very much allowed by the state of New York, but this is one of the things they allow options on. So, yeah, I'll be working with you, Wendy, I call it the corner office, and the board, and Bob, whatever it takes to keep your wishes.
And will you have some recommendations for us on those caps? I mean, will you have dollar amounts in mind that you can work with us on?
I could develop a crystal ball number for the effect on town taxes. And again, when you're just adding people to the top end. Now, if you raise it to 50,000, that doesn't give them 50,000. Essentially, it gives them 5%. You're raising that little sliding scale up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the minimum you could, this whole thing is in motion now.
Mm-hmm.
Best way that I envision it is like an accordion.
Yeah. Well, it's to reflect the current state and the changes in values and incomes. So, again, I'm glad I'm not throwing any bombs at you this time.
Thank you.
This is kind of good stuff.
It's appreciated.
It's good for the people.
Yeah, no, very, very appreciated.
Okay, we'll be working together. And thank you guys for coming out on a real American night, right? And I'm gonna dodge.
Thank you.
It's
Feel better.
supper time.
I'm so sorry,
Hi, Jane.
Steve.
Thank you, Steve. All right, good night, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And now poor Judith McDonald, who I said, oh, if you come at like 7:30, we'll probably be ready. Judith is going to give us a report on the status of verdict part.
Thank you. Wendy asked me just to give you a quick update. I don't know if you know, but the verdict park is in that triangle between Huns Lake Road and Route 82, right behind the Stissing Bank. It's a little more than 5 acres. It was donated to the town, but into a trust by somebody in order to protect it for the town, because originally Dollar General was looking at that piece of land to build a Dollar General, and somebody kindly donated it to the town. Almost nothing can be built on it, but that's really not what we're looking at. So the town formed a committee, and we've been looking at it, and we're very lucky, not because of me, but because we had Charlie Shore on it, who is he really knows the environmental law. He's worked in this area for years and years and years. Frank Sellerberg, who knows all about planning and wetlands and what you do and how you also build things on land. There's Mark Lagos, who lives in the house that adjoins the property. And then finally, there's a young woman who's moved into town called Lucy Kashowski, who's looking at putting some kind of a bee operation there. But what we are looking at is really doing something that is really, it's environmental, it's conservation. We're looking at, there's a lot of wetland in that property. We're looking at digging out a pond, which we are permitted to do, which would be a fishing pond for people. We are looking at the front part, which abuts Huns Lake Road, of just putting in a meadow and having natural wildflowers. And then what also it would have a walk around the property. It's not terribly big. Hopefully there would be a gazebo, which we believe we're permitted to put in there. And there would be things that would tell people about the flowers and the animals that are there, etc. There's already been, as a start, there has been Hudsonia came in and looked at the land, looked at what was on the land. There are no endangered species, which permits us to do more than they would have been permitted with endangered species. And where we are now is we think we have identified a place on Route 82 for parking, because you can't have a little park without parking. Frank Selleberg has drawn a plan which will show a path throughout the whole property where the pond would go, which is where some streams come out. And we will probably need boardwalks over the wetlands. And where we are now is we've spoken to Dee Dee Barrett, it's trying to find, we need quotes, because if we don't get quotes about how much it's going to cost initially to put in this pond and build the paths, we can't start getting money from the state and lots of other places. So currently, we are looking for people to give us quotes, and unfortunately, I can tell you, it is not easy. But that's where we are. We are also Charlie and Frank will develop a master plan, which can be given as part of all the fundraising. They've also been working on the various approvals that need to be done. We have not started fundraising, and we're very aware of what's going on with the rec. And we're hoping initially, to be very honest with you, to be able to go into there are state funds that are available for this. And Dutchess County funds, and that's where we are. It all takes time for whatever reason, but at some point, I do believe we're gonna have a little nature park, and named after the Burdicks who lived in that area forever. And I think it's gonna be nice for everyone. You know, there's some issues with wheelchairs, and how do you do that with paths? We'll do as best as we can, and we're really thinking about all of them. Any questions? Sorry, I didn't face the board. I
would like to say, I know how long and hard you guys have been working, and I really we all appreciate your dedication. And it will happen. If you build it, they will come. I don't know how long it'll take, but it's going to be a wonderful little meditative pocket park for the town.
The only thing we may need to do is come to the board for certain resolutions as we start to raise money, because they will want to be sure that the committee is authorized to deal with people. And whoever we're getting the money from is going to have to basically give us the language, because they will have their own specific language, I assume. So that's where we are now. I hope in 6 months I can give you better information. I do, if you want, there is a plan that I can give to Wendy, but it's handwritten now. It's what Frank has contemplated. He's walked the property. I've walked it. If you want to look at it, though it's quite overgrown, if you drive up 82, there's a guardrail, and right beyond that guardrail, first there's the bank, and then there's this guardrail. You can drive in and take a quick look, but it's wet. Well, now nothing's wet, but it's wet, and it looks like to all of us that there's been some gravel and other things put there, so there won't be an issue about putting parking there, although there will probably be a need from the state, because 82 is a state road, and we're also very much hoping that we can get a crossroad, but that's in the future. A tiger stripe or whatever that is to make it safer. Any questions?
Great, sounds great.
Just a point of information for you, I'm on the Rec Park Campaign Committee, and we retained a landscape architecture firm to do the master plan for the rec parking. Then that same master planning firm helped us with the application for a state grant. And one of the elements, of course, was exactly what you just said, which was providing cost estimates. So that type of resource might be useful to you as you move forward.
Maybe they would be able to help us finding people who can give us those quotes.
Yes.
Steve Mosher should be able to help you with that, shouldn't he?
Have you spoken to Steve?
I have to speak to Frank.
Okay. All right.
I've tried to speak to Winnicky, who put in the nature preserve on Bowman Road, and I have to follow up with them, but that was very special. And they had a lot of money in order to put in that nature preserve, because they're also removing all the invasive species.
But we may be able to help you just with some local.
That would be fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 4, Resolution 9A. of 2022 to transfer funds from the Whitlock Estate account class and move the funds to the general fund. We have already approved the work that Beech Tree Landscaping did at Whitlock, but we need a formal resolution in order to move the funds out of the New York class account into the general fund so that we can pay the bill. So this resolution does that. Whereas the town of Stanford had Beech Tree Landscaping clear the trails in the Whitlock Preserve, whereas the New York class account ending in 007 Whitlock Estate account contains funds for this purpose, whereas the town of Stanford will transfer funds from the New York class account, Whitlock Estate account to the Millbrook General Fund account ending in 0018. Now therefore be it resolved, the supervisor is authorized to complete the following budget modifications and transfer the funds from the Whitlock Estate account to the general fund, and the amount is $1,680.
Is this? Second.
Thank you.
Ernie Burton,
Yes.
Ann Arendt,
Yes.
Margaret Fallon, Nathan LaVertu.
Yes.
Mary Beth.
Before you move on, did the CDC reach out, they don't need a fall cleaning because the spring cleaning with the CDC was so successful. They don't need Beech Tree to go in for the rest of the search.
I don't have the
That's
schedule,
great.
but
Okay,
I'll let
just,
them
yeah.
know. Not needed this fall.
Correct.
Okay. Resolution, what are we? 9B, a highway vehicle transfer fund. To approve budget modifications and transfer the funds from the highway vehicle reserve fund to the highway fund. And this is to pay for the truck that was bought, that we authorized from Navistar for $83,092.80. Originally, we had believed this would just come out of the CHIPS money. That was Jim's plan. But I would say there was, we all missed something in the budget where the appropriation line for CHIPS was $150,000, but the revenue line was $250,000. We are going to be able to move funds around the highway lines to get that appropriation line to match the revenue line, because we will be able to get $250,000 of CHIPS money, but this purchase is putting us over the top. So we would like to take the fund from the highway vehicle fund and put it in the highway fund instead. I'm not going to read this whole thing, it's just the resolution is to transfer the $83,000 from the highway vehicle reserve fund into the highway general. Second.
Wendy Burton,
Yes.
Ann Arendt,
Yes.
Margaret Fallon,
Yes.
Nathan LaVertu,
Yes.
Frank Pepe.
Yes.
This is another technicality. We passed a motion to use $3,000 worth of the American Rescue Plan funds for the Grange Food Pantry, but we didn't formally pass the resolution to move the money from the ARC account into the general fund account. The resolution was 7D, the one that we passed on July 14th, which basically authorized us to use that ARC money for the Grange.
Second.
Thank you.
Wendy Burton,
Yes.
Ann Arendt,
Yes.
Margaret Fallon,
Yes.
Nathan LaVertu,
Yes.
Frank Pepe.
Yes.
And then Resolution 9D is our, I told you last month, we had put off doing budget modifications until we had a substantial amount of lines to correct, which we do now. So this budget modification I'm not going to read it out loud, it will be part of the minutes, but it basically it takes funds where funds exist and moves them into funds that are needed, to line items that are needed, that are needing adjustment.
Second.
Wendy Burnett,
Yes.
Ann Aaron,
Yes.
Margaret Fallon,
Yes.
Nathan LaVercha,
Yes.
Art Happy.
Yes.
Okay, this is a two-part number. I would like to make a motion to accept the bid. I'll give a little history. For several years, we've been using without charge the equipment that Video Ventures has provided to us, the microphones and speakers, the cables, a small channel mixer, all of the elements that we have needed in order to record the town board meetings. Some of that equipment broke, and so I asked for an estimate of what it would cost to replace all of those components so that we could continue having microphones and recording the way that we do. And I was given a proposal by Video Ventures for a line item equipment that totaled $2,340, and then there's an estimated not to exceed 5 hours of installation. So this proposal would come to no more than $2,840, it could be less. And then because of the way that our procurement policy is written, for items that are, this is from standard number 3, for purchases that are under
6 and more than 2?
Under 6 and more than 2, we need to have 2 bids that they can be oral or they can be written. So we contacted another company, the Hudson Valley Audiovisual Company. We gave them a list of the components we were looking for, and they didn't price what we asked for, but they came into the town hall and did their assessment of what they thought we needed, and that all came to a written proposal of $6,749. That doesn't disqualify our policy. Our policy, and we've checked with Ray DeChellis, former OSC auditor, and she advises us on financial questions. It doesn't mean we need to go out and get a third bid. It means that they didn't do what we asked and they got a bid. We received a bid that is 3 times as expensive than the Video Ventures bid. So I would like to make a motion to accept the Video Ventures bid so we can move forward and purchase this equipment.
We got a lot of emails, so I just want to make sure that I'm clear. So in one email, did you say that this could come from ARP funding?
Yes.
And under what, I guess, under what standard does this qualify for ARP?
It's town, Jane, could you?
Town infrastructure?
It's a very broad standard. It is formulated something like, if it's a service the town traditionally provides. And of course, the town buys its own AV. So that's the basis.
We buy the services, we don't buy the equipment though. Correct?
What is the history, Wendy, with Video Ventures?
As far as I know, Video Ventures has always, they've always supplied their own equipment. Pete approached me 2 years ago to see if we buy our own to save wear and tear, and we were in that budget mess. So he just agreed to let us keep using the equipment.
I asked Nathan, can I address that? It didn't seem like a stretch.
Okay.
It's part of the service.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I just could hear or understand. What was just spoken? I heard
was,
nation.
yeah, so
Nathan.
I think Jane's argument is that like whether it's the whether it's the filming of the video or whether it is providing the speaker or the microphone, it would fall under the umbrella of service.
Yeah, it's a function. The
For
town
the definition
puts.
of the federal funding.
Yes,
I see.
which is pretty darn bad. I mean, by the third time they did their final whatever.
Thank you. I just couldn't hear.
So is there any more discussion? Okay.
I have a second, or did I miss that?
I'll second it.
All in favor, or do you want a separate vote?
Separate vote.
Okay. Wendy Burton,
Yes.
Ann Arendt,
Yes.
Margaret Fallon,
Yes.
Nathan LaVerture,
No.
Frank Pepe.
I abstain.
Okay. Motion passes. And now, because the motion passed, Resolution 9F of 2022 to approve budget modification and transfer of funds from the American Rescue Plan Fund to the General Fund. This is for the cost of up to $28.40, which would include both the equipment and the installation.
Oh, a second.
I thought we just voted on that.
No, that was a motion to buy it. Now we have a resolution to transfer funds from the American Rescue Plan Fund to the General Fund.
Wendy Burton,
Yes.
Ann Arendt,
Yes.
Margaret Fallon,
Yes.
Nathan LaVerture,
Abstain.
Frank Pepe.
Yes.
Okay. This is just a point of order. We have set the next comprehensive plan workshop with much confusion on September 28th from 6:30 till 8. 8, is that correct, Nathan? Or was it,
Well,
or was it 6 to 7:30?
I think we had said 6:30 to 8, but I think what was written was the 6 to 7:30. Not in the agenda, but in the notes.
Email.
The supervisor.
In the newsletter?
I think it was, because that's what the original time we had, and we moved it to 6:30 because there was an individual that was late and we were trying to accommodate them in the future.
Yeah. So,
I'm just an individual.
okay, so, what should, is 6:30 to 8 okay with everybody? Or do you?
6:30 to 8 works for me.
Yeah, that's fine,
Okay,
yeah.
all right, so we're not even voting on that, that's just a point of order. I make a motion to approve the town minutes from July 11th.
Second.
Second.
You can do it all over, you know, all in
All in
favor.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approval of the comprehensive plan workshop minutes from 8/25/22, which Frank very generously wrote for us.
I think the word is succinct.
They're good minutes.
Beautiful.
I don't know, just a point of order, I don't know if I get to vote on the minutes that I wrote.
That makes sense.
You could abstain.
You can abstain if you
Oh,
want.
okay, yeah.
Second.
Well, I guess I should do a roll call vote. Wendy Burton,
Yes?
Ann Arendt,
Yes.
Margaret Fallon,
Yes.
Nathan LaVerture,
Yes.
Frank Pepe, abstain.
Abstain.
Rita, have you got those up on the website yet?
No, I was waiting for approval. I
Oh,
don't do
good.
anything with Arendt.
Point taken.
Usually.
Yes. Yeah, point taken. Finally, I would like the approval of the abstract for September. The general fund, we spent $49,433.01. The highway was $11,519.53. Bangle Lights, $935.32. Escrow, I don't understand why we keep putting this here, but it was $4,641.68. And we got to pay $117,612 of the DASNY grant, which is our portion. Well, our portion is $125,000 from the grant that Lauren got from Judy Barrett's office towards the tennis courts. So we finally got all the paperwork submitted, and we were able to pay that.
Second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good. We have, as far as I can tell, no other agenda items. So I open up for you weary and loyal citizens a second privilege of the floor.
Please don't anybody say anything.
No. Don't listen to her. You can say anything you want.
We welcome
Anything
your
you want.
comments. No technical. Corey, are you thinking about it?
No. Oh, I was gonna say thank you guys and appreciate what you guys do. Whether or not I always agree or not, I do appreciate what you guys do.
That's nice.
Yes.
I'll get up because those are the regs. John Hafner, Town of Stanford, Hobbs Lane. This is not about logging, it's not about the Rocky Reef subdivision. I just want to thank you guys too for a lot of work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Whoa!
And thanks for staying to the bitter end.
Yeah, you get special points for sitting here for 14 hours.
14.
Okay, I will
Nice to be there.
close the privilege of the floor, and now I will close the regular meeting of the town board so that the town board can go into executive session to discuss a personnel matter.
Doesn't it have to be one?
I second the motion to go into executive session.
Thank you all.
All in favor?
All right, I'd like to call this meeting back to order. The board came.
Second.
We came out of
All in favor?
executive session
All in favor?
and we did not take action.
We did not take action.
We did decide to make a communication action. So that is some action, isn't it?
But we didn't take a formal action of voting on anything.
Oh, correct, yeah, okay, I didn't know if we needed to. Okay.
So now, since Margaret has gone home,
I will second.
no, you have to make
Make
the
a
motion.
Oh, make the motion. I'll make the motion and I'll second it.
To
end our meeting, the public session.
the word is,
Adjourn.
I second it. All in favor?
It's 10 of 10.
Okay, it's not like.
Words are no longer there for me.